Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the MagneZOne. I'm Cossack11, and with me is Clutch,
Hello.
Sam,
Going.
and normally Emerson would be with us, but he couldn't make it this week. So instead, we have our guest coach and guest host. I don't know why I said guest coach, maybe because he's also coach in the league, Pack.
Hey.
So we're actually going to start things off with a topic that Pack is working on for his blog. And you know what? I'll briefly introduce that. So Pack, he does blog for the RDL, mostly his impressions on the upcoming week, trades that have happened. It's almost kind of in a way like a weekly report on the league. And he's also done some very good posts about just general tips, especially when prepping for battles and actually the mental game when you're in the battle. And he's been working on a post that actually coincides neatly with the topic we're talking about this week, and that is formulating a draft list or putting together a draft plan. Because you need a plan when you're going to go into a draft. You need to have an idea of what you're going to draft. Because if you don't, you're going to suffer. You're not gonna perform well in your league. And since Pack's the guest, let's have him lead off with his thoughts on the subject.
All right. So first off, what I always recommend for a draft is, and for any season really, is figure out what your expectation is. What do you want to do? Like, do you really want to win the season? Do you really want to play a super defensive core or like the Voltron core that Cossack was talking about way in the pre-ramble that we were doing? And so you want to start with that and build from there.
Right.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely want to have a focus when you're starting to formulate your draft list. And what we mean by a focus is you're usually building around a core, and you're usually building around an archetype as well. So you usually want to know what archetype you're building into, or at least a primary archetype. So are you building an offensive oriented team? Are you building more of a bulky or stall oriented team?
Stall.
Well, we'll get into stall and the weird intricacies of that. But you got to know what your archetype is, and you got to have a focus, because an unfocused team, as I learned season 1, is going to cause you to suffer, because
Yes.
you're going to spend the early weeks losing. Probably, I don't know, it might it's going to depend on your league too, but if you have an unfocused team that doesn't really know what it wants to do, and you don't have a lot of synergies, you're going to have problems. So you definitely want to start with your focus. Sam, what would you do after you've gotten your focus? What do you do after you got your focus?
uh, I had to say anything. I'd say it depends on what your focus is first and foremost, right? For some people, when they're drafting, they're going to be drafting, like Clutch mentioned last week, a single star to build around that. You can go back to last week, and one of the things that we talked about in terms of getting the most out of your tier 4 and tier 5s is looking to, if you drafted a star with maybe even with a core set of Pokemon that are going to support your star somehow. If you have something that's a little bit of a glass cannon, we were talking about this before the podcast, that Voltron core can really, really help you out with pivoting into that glass cannon to get large hits off. For me, that's what I was looking for, was to fill out kind of a list of things that I needed. There were certain things I wanted to resist for. I drafted Beware on the basis that it was a decent wall breaker, and it also gave me a ghost immunity. It gave me a normal type, as my team didn't resist well. But those are my thoughts, is that once you've got your star, you need to have a list of, here are things that support my star or my core have on my team going forward.
Right. And Usually, so when you're talking about star, and I think that very much fits in with your focus, because sometimes your focus is just one mon. You're building around maybe your first 2 draft picks. You're building around those 2, or just the first draft pick. And that can mean you're building around a mega or a tier 1. There are definitely tier 1s that you want to build around. And what are we'll go to clutch next. What are some good examples of just build arounds?
Well, when you're looking at a build around, I think what you want to look at is what can my star not break through? Because like I drafted Terrakion first round. I know everyone's like that's a reach, but I think Terrakion's an absolute force in the format, and if you give it the opportunities that it can't break through something, it'll break through really well. So I think what you want to do is like, what can't my star break through? So Terrakion struggles with like poison types. Well, he gets earthquake coverage, but you don't really have much. So I drafted a Reuniclus second round, just to pair it with it. Also forms a nice Psychic Dark Fighting core with it. You really want to focus on where your draft needs to move, and you have your basis as your star. You need to be able to take hits that your star doesn't want to take, and you need to have the Pokemon that can kill the mons that faint the mons that your mon can't physically do itself.
Right. Another thing to note, if you're gonna, so looking at these same things that we're saying, but from a perspective of your drafting around an archetype instead of a star, because I think that is a valid alternative strategy. Usually, the first few rounds of the draft, you're picking up your essentials for that archetype. So if you're drafting Stall, you're probably picking Mega Sableye in the first 3 rounds. You're probably picking Chansey or Blissey in the first 3 rounds. And you're probably picking something like Clefable in the first round, because Clefable is 100% necessary for Stall. Now, if you're building for an archetype, though, one of the things you should consider, especially when you're getting into the mid to late rounds, is picking mons that will help shut down your weaknesses. So a good example is if you have a weakness, if you're running Stall or even bulky offense, you have a possibility of running into setup sweepers that could be a problem for you. So if you already have Clefable, then you probably won't need much more than that. But if you're running Stall and let's say you do have Clefable, but you're running Stall, you need to get some offensive pressure. Even if you're running Stall, you need to have offensive threats on your team. And I didn't do that. That's why I suffered early in the season.
You mean Scizor is not enough offensive pressure?
All of these things that are coming up sound a little bit familiar.
Yeah. Well, and I think a good example of an unfocused team, just in general, Genki's team was very unfocused.
Yeah, before
it was. Yeah.
It was, this mon beat me one time, so I'm going to get it so no one else can.
Yeah, that was kind of his whole basis for picking Volcarona, which is a pitfall that you don't want to fall into. If you're doing if this is your, if you're going into your second season draft, picking a mon just because you had a particular issue with it the season previous is not a good way to draft. It's going to cause you issues unless you're building around it. Like if you're drafting it because let's say you had trouble with Lando T and you're like, you know what? I really like how this I really like what this mon is doing. It's wrecked me last season. I like what it's doing. I want to build around this. That's different. But if you're just straight up picking it because you don't want to play against it, that's what we call in a lot of drafting formats. That's what we call hate picking. Hate picking generally backfires on you
because it doesn't give your team any focus. It's just here's a mon, here's a mon, here's a mon. Mm-hmm. I think another pitfall that people fall into is they just pick cores to pick cores. Oh, I've got this Steel Dragon Fairy core, but it doesn't work together. They don't do anything different. They all get beat the same way. Right.
A good example of a Dragon Steel Fairy core that didn't work was my my attempt at a Dragon Fairy Steel core of Clefable, Scizor, and I can't even remember what that thing is
Turtonator.
Turtonator, yes.
Terminator.
So like
Like
the first two, you hear Clefable and you're like, okay. You hear Caesar and you're like, oh, that's a little unorthodox, but
that's really nice.
But for a bulky offense team, I could see it. And then you hear Turtonator and you're just like, what now?
Hello?
The budgetist of budget dragon types.
It is literally like if you're scraping the bottom of the barrel for dragons if you're picking
The
Turtonator.
barrel.
Like you've broken the bottom of the barrel. You're gripping into the dirt underneath. As much as I hate to say it, Turtonator is not very good. As I'm like, I can make this work.
It's a very good fire resist, so if you need a V-Create, switch in for your division. Turtonator.
Yeah, and you know what? In a niche slot like that might be something you might want to run, especially if you've got like opponents that have like Moltres or
they're running like fire spam again on a team, which is a completely viable draft strategy because fire is just such a great offensive.
Right, and offensive typing spam lists are usually just pretty effective in general. We've been seeing a lot of burb spam this year.
Bird spam is always effective
Yep.
because there's only so few flying resists, and if you get your team comp right and you can break it down, it's very hard to kill.
Well, I mean, look at Zapdos.
Zapdos is so good in the format. Oh my goodness.
Zapdos caused me massive headaches planning for it because, like, what do? It like
it does everything.
Yeah, and that's the thing. You can build it for hyper offense. You can build it for bulk. You can build it for so many things, and it just and it's a defogger, and it's just
It's got this. You can run agility. You can run like offensive. You can run like physically offensive drill peck to break through grass types or something weird like that.
Well, and then even like recently, Mon that put in work for me, Gliscor.
Gliscor is such a great mon. Oh my gosh, like it's got so many options.
Well, yeah, and then you got Lando T Lando T is probably pound for pound the best, if not one of the best mons in tier 1.
Oh, easily. It just does what it does, and
it's extremely flexible. There's a lot of different roles it can play, and it plays all of those roles very, very, very well. On top of that, it's got really nasty typing that only really has problems with ice types.
Yeah. I think another thing that's really good in tier 1, I know it's kind of, one of those pick up and you just use it. I know just from experience, Azu is just one of those things that's like, it only has like 3 or 4 sets, but literally if you miss prep around one set, you lose.
Yeah.
Real quick, I'm gonna jump. Yeah. I want to jump in as well.
Yeah, go for it.
It was great, and I think that these are all great things to potentially build around or to draft as your. I think Lando T going in the first round will never be a surprise to anyone. I'm curious about from you guys if I can like shift the topic just a little bit.
Go for it.
Talking about draft lists.
Yep.
This is a very general question. And maybe I can start this out with directing it to Pac, who of course is working on this this blog post for this. And if you guys want to chip in as well, how do you put together your full draft list? Because I assume that you guys are doing more than just writing down the 11 mons you want.
Right.
You're writing down options and things like that.
That's actually I like this direction. Yeah. Let's have Pac weigh in on that.
Yeah. So. Obviously, as we said, we start out with an idea. Like I worked a lot before this season with Adam and with Clutch on what I want to do for my core. And so like I have Finny and Ferrothorn, and I really wanted to get those two because, as we said earlier, what things can cover the weaknesses, and those don't share any weaknesses. But then I tried to build stuff around that. So I had 5 tier 4s. I had 7 tier 5s that I had bolded because I made a copy of the document and I just edited what I needed, what I could take, what I would want. Basically, so I didn't go into like the hate picking idea where I didn't be like, well, for instance, Blaziken did stuff last season, so I'm gonna pick it just so I don't see it. So I didn't want to do that, and I only mispicked on one thing being Mismagius, which ended up being good, but not fitting really with my team that I needed.
Yeah, and and this is an interesting thing. So one of the things that I do want to say about formulating your draft plan, as long as you avoid like common pitfalls like hate picking or just picking something because it's cool or picking a core because it's cool and not because it has synergies with your team. If you can avoid pitfalls like that, there isn't really a wrong way to formulate your draft plan. As long as you keep in mind your focus, whatever that may be, whether it be an archetype or your star, as long as you keep that in mind and then keep in mind what you want supporting it, because this is why hate picking doesn't work. Hate picking doesn't work not only because your team will lack focus, but because even if you hate pick something, there's usually either something that does its job about as well in its tier, or there's a budget option in a lower tier that can do the job. A good example that I would put out there is, yeah, you could hate pick Clefable if it was walling you like, and if it was walling all of your setup sweepers the previous season, but you could hate pick that, but someone will probably pick up Quagsire, and your setup sweepers are probably still going to get walled. So,
Because Quagsire is really excellent.
Yeah,
tier 5 bulk.
He did well for me today in his first match, so it was a great pickup for me. I think that he works. I think he actually synergizes better with my team than Clefable did.
Can I also say, I think that another common pitfall for people who are coming in for the first time, yours truly, was that I found that I was drawn to certain Pokemon because I saw them as a steal.
Right.
You have to be really careful. Like if you're watching something drop down the draft list that you think should have been drafted, you don't draft it just because it should have been drafted a round ago.
Yeah, I was guilty of this because I picked up Stack Attack pretty late. And
yeah, see my real quick, my example is Toxapex for me. I picked that thing up because I was just like, man, there was talk in the chat about like, there's these cores that use Toxapex are just like break, and I was just like, man, I've got Bulu, I've got Heatran. If I pick up Toxapex, I'm just gonna have this unbreakable core. And then when I picked it up later on, looking back, I was like, well, not only is this another ground weakness for my team, which but also, I mean, okay, completely unrelated side note, I was a little bit bitter about that. Everyone can probably attest. I'm still more worried about electric spam against my team. But going back to the point, I realized that Toxapex, like I've used Toxapex in non-draft formats before, and I didn't like it. It didn't fit my play style, and it didn't fit the goal of the team. Dropped that thing before I even used it once, and swapped it out for Gyarados, which has been a much better fit.
Right. And yeah, whereas for me, I actually would probably, I like Toxapex because I'm a dirty stall player. So
exactly.
So I like Toxapex for what it does, but that's actually going back to picking a core and not really building around your core. I had a really good defensive core that didn't have a lot of good support in season 1, and that was I had Ferrothorn and Toxapex.
Ferropex is a great core.
Oh, it's a brutal core. If you can get a team built around that supports it, oh man, that's just a
you had the right Mega too in Mega Sceptile, because Mega Sceptile, just go Toxapex. Oh darn.
Yeah. Yep. And you know what? In the matches that I won, it was because that core combined with Mega Sceptile really did what it was supposed to do, or at least parts of that core. So, but the problem is the rest of my team, I feel, didn't really have the support for it, and my team was kind of unfocused. So basically, how I build my draft list, since we're talking about different ways to build a draft list, I usually focus around an archetype. So like this season, I focused around stall, and I made 2 critical errors that I look back on. And I don't think I probably still wouldn't have done anything different. Well, knowing what I know now, I would have. But back then, knowing what I did then, I still wouldn't have. I probably would have drafted the exact same team, because the team I drafted, as Pac pointed out to me in our preamble, it was a very good ladder team. Like this is a team that like does work in OU ladder.
Oh, for sure.
but it's not such a good team for draft. And the reason is in draft format, it's much easier because in ladders, your opponent could have literally anything in OU. And even if but once you see what their team is, it's pretty obvious what sets they're running because most people are usually using like Smogone sets in ladders. And very rarely do you see a weird off the wall set. Very rarely.
Because most of the time it just doesn't work in draft and not in ladder. Because like you have to run into this, you have to have coverage for this, and it doesn't work. So you just like
where in draft sets that normally would be unviable become very viable. And a good example of that was the Salamence Flame Orb Facade set from playoffs last season that just completely ruined Adamant's day. And that's because you know what their roster has, and he saw his roster. And he's like, Adamant doesn't have any ghosts. Put that Flame Orb on the Salamence. Put that Facade on there. And I'm just going to sweep his team. And he did. And it was brutal.
Jeez.
And to go along with that, it's not like it's a necessary thing, but what you see from a lot of more successful draft teams is balance makes you more successful.
Yes.
I mean, if you look at for the RDL for season 2, we had 2 teams that went 0-4 for the first 4 weeks. One had basically all defense, and the other one had all offense.
Right. and that's actually true because and if you noticed, like with the free agent picks, most of the teams have been trending towards either a true balanced roster or towards a bulky offense, which is very close to balanced roster. Like. Because my team is definitely now firmly in the bulky offense category. I can still run stall if I need to. And that, like today's set that I ran, I was running 4 walls and 2 sweepers. And it worked. So stall can still work. You just have to have an offensive presence to keep them from setup sweeping on you and to keep them from using like just spamming wall breakers.
I don't think it's more of stall is what you've gifted to now is more of just having a nice defensive core you can pivot into your offensive threats like Lottie and Shark.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
It's not
true
really
stall,
stall,
but it's about as I think it's about as effective as stall is going to be in our current metagame.
Because like you have this great nice core of offensive on. You have Volcarona, you got Lottie. Gliscor can be run offensively so easily.
Mm-hmm. I was actually
got Shark.
There was 1 week I was running a Power Herb Skydrop set with Gliscor.
That's beautiful. But you think it's with when you have Volcarona, you have like 2 things that you have a bunch of great defoggers around your Volcarona now, and the best magic bouncer in the entire format in Mega Sableye because it does not care. So rocks aren't going up against you.
Right.
No, probably people aren't probably even bringing hazards unless they know they can beat Mega Sableye.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, the only person who's run hazards against me this entire season is Nadia. She's the only one who's run hazards against me. Like
Excuse me?
Oh wait, did you run hazards against me?
I'm pretty sure I ran hazards on you.
Maybe you did, but it might not have made like I might have gotten because I might not have remembered that. Maybe
it was a long time ago. I don't remember either.
We can always look at the replay later. You know what? I think you did, but I think they got magic bounced by Mega Sableye or something. And then
you didn't even bring Mega Sableye against me though. That's the thing.
No Mega Sableye came out.
Right. I don't maybe a couple people have used but majority of my opponents haven't brought any sort of hazards against me at all. Because I've got 2 great defoggers and magic bounce. Like there's been weeks where I literally didn't run any hazard removal, and I was super worried that someone was gonna like out tech me and run hazards, and they didn't. But that's the other thing. When you make sure you draft at least a couple hazard controllers.
Oh yeah.
And honestly, tier 3 and tier 4 have some decent hazard removal in it. So I
think when you're looking at hazard removal, I think you just want like 3 or 4 good consistent defoggers.
Yeah.
That you can deal with. I think if you get over that, it starts to really cut into your other portions of your team.
Well, and it's also going to depend on like your team comp, but definitely at least 2 defoggers, at least. And like rapid spinners can work, but the problem with rapid spin is there's lots of good spin blockers.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got Delmise. That's a rapid spinner and a spin blocker. So
Mm-hmm.
like it with stuff like that going around, and ghosts are very popular, and there's a lot of really good ghosts, especially in the low tiers. Because like Cophagrigus is really good in draft.
It's a great spin blocker.
Yep.
Great spin blocker.
Dusklops is a great spin blocker. Dusk Noir is a great spin blocker.
If you just need a...
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Pack. Go ahead.
What I was going to say is I think that an underrated offensive spin blocker in tier 5 is regular old Rotom.
Yeah, I was just about to mention that. Regular Rotom is a good spin blocker, and he's got a decent offensive typing too.
Decent offensive typing. Throw a Scarf on that thing, and you've got a fast Volt Switch user who's got another decent stab on the side. Like it's a good tier 5 pick, I think.
Well, and that's the thing. I think what a lot of people don't realize is tier 4 and 5 have so many good Volt Turn cores in there. So many
they're
good.
Just so cheap and budgety. You got Manectric down there, which is just regular Manectric.
You got
105.
Right, yeah, you got Manectric, you got Electros, which is a great pivot. Because it's electric with levitate. Like it's
Togedemaru, I think, is kind of underrated.
Yeah.
He's got a very nice type. He's got a really nice typing. It can take electric hits, and it's like you can run it defensively, and it checks really well.
Well, yeah, and it's got Spiky Shield, which is really good against contact users.
And spikes. I think it says does it have spikes?
I think it
Any
does.
hazards at all?
I think it does have.
No, it doesn't say spikes.
No, it doesn't?
Nope,
okay.
It doesn't. I just looked it up.
Which is actually kind of surprising. I would think if any mon had spikes, it would, but yeah.
It's spiky shield, but not spikes.
Well, hey.
It's Wish. It's got a great utility move pool. It's got Wish, Nuzzle. Like if you and Volt Switch, like come in, do a couple of things, and get out. Like it's got this little nice utility spot, which is really good. Fits really well in a lot of different teams.
And that's something that I definitely because that's another thing to think about when you're putting your draft list together is you may want to consider getting a Volt Turn core. That's something, because even if that's not your main focus, getting a Volt Turn core that fits with your team, that's the key. It has to fit with your team. But if it fits in and meshes with your team, having that ability is very powerful.
Having the ability not to have to make hard switches all season long is very appreciated. I have a team in another league I have absolutely 0 Volt Turn core. There's nothing on my team that knows U-turn or Volt Switch, and it is so painful.
Yeah, that's kind of how my team is now. The only difference is now for my team, I don't necessarily need a Volt Turn core because I have really good pivots. Amoonguss, great pivot. Chansey, decent pivot. Alomomola can pivot if you need it to. Gliscor can pivot. Like I got a really solid set of pivots to get my threats on the board.
So, anyways, things you want to discuss with the topic of like, are there any more like things we should point to here?
I think
in terms of wrapping up a list.
One other thing, when you're talking, let's talk about free points because that's something you definitely have to be knowledgeable about how you're managing your free points. So if you're drafting in a GBA style league like we do for the RDL. Megas, when you draft them, megas are split up into their own set of tiers, and lower tiers give you more free points to use to pick for your free slots. You have 4 of them. So a lot of people will consider, and this is a pitfall that some people fell into season 1, not as many in season 2, but some people in season 1 fell into this pitfall where they picked a lower tier mega expressly for the purpose of getting an extra tier 1 or an extra tier 2. Now that's not a bad idea, but you do need to consider that mega, like, is that mega and whatever tier 1 you were picking doing more for your team than a better mega would have? Because frankly, megas are some of the most powerful Pokemon in the league. And
Yeah,
Well,
with the right support, of course.
I mean, obviously with the right support, but like, you know, because like you have to ask yourself, if I pick Mega Obama Snow, which is a tier 4, so that's going to give you 80 points. So that's essentially giving you like probably at least a free tier 2, right? Because, you know, extra 80 points on top of the 400 you got, you're getting an extra tier 2 out of that. But you have to ask yourself, is Mega Obama Snow any good for my team at all? If it isn't, probably don't want to do that. Because having a Mega that doesn't work with your team makes it much easier to plan for you. Because usually the Megas comprise some of the biggest threats on a team.
Yeah, like I could switch Mega Charizard X for Mega Camerupt. I wouldn't lose my fire typing. I could also switch one of my tier 4s to a tier 2. It's not going to be any better than what I have currently.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, arguably, I'd say like if I can't imagine a scenario where Pack switches Mega Charizard for Mega Camerupt and picks any tier 2 that's currently available,
right.
Maybe even any tier 2 in general. And I look at his team and think, wow, that got scarier.
Right.
But some of that's due just to the fact that his team composition is so built around Zard X.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We're talking about when drafting. Like, we're gonna have a whole separate topic where we talk about making free agent transactions and stuff like that.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But there are some good budget picks in the mega tiers. For example, in our league, I think, and we'll be talking more on this later. I don't want to go too into detail now, but M-Aggron I think is a great budget pick for your mega.
Mega Steelix is as well a fantastic one, especially on sand. And if you can get to abuse Sand Force, that thing hits so hard.
And even Mega Ampharos is a pretty decent one because it's it's Electric Dragon. That's not
Electric Dragon is an awesome typing.
Yeah,
and it's a slow volt turn.
Exactly.
Slow volt turn, which is Mega Shark in our league just because of the non-mega rule.
Yeah.
It's
tier 3
down with Mega Ampharos.
Well,
but I think it's a pretty solid mon even down there. Just due to the fact that Strong Jaw hits ridiculously hard, and its 105 speed tier is just enough to outpace
it's still
good amount of stuff.
Yeah, it's gonna even at its base speed, it's still gonna outspeed enough. And depending on how the rules work, I actually want to talk to Michael about this because I wonder what would happen if you had Sharpedo and Mega Sharpedo on your roster. If that would allow you to speed boost into Mega Sharpedo, because if that's the case, I don't think it is the case, but it's something I definitely want to clarify because someone's going to try it if it's not clarified. And it's better that that's something we don't need to worry about it now because most teams have used up all their free agent transactions. We don't have to worry about it. But
if you wanted to play it really smart, you could play it in like if they stack something to rocks, you could bring in Shark and you get the speed boost, and then you have to mega the turn that you can mega.
Yeah, and
there's a way around it, but it's absolutely frustrating to put around it.
It's very difficult to exploit.
Yeah. Well, I think just like the thing with Mega Sharpedo, and that's something you actually have to consider, is your speed tiers in draft are going to be weird. It's going to be very dependent on who you're facing. So, like, for example, today I was facing Nadia's team, and Nadia had only one mon that outsped Latios. Unscarfed Latios, and that was Tornadus. But a large portion of her team could outspeed Latios if she put a scarf on them, and it's draft, so you kind of have to assume they could put a scarf on anything. Like,
Superior is also faster than Latios.
Exactly. Oh yeah, you're right.
113 is greater than 110.
Yep. The thing though is with Superior, I didn't view it as much of a threat as Tornadus. Because Latios can frankly tank like one hit and then Ice Beam Superior into Oblivion. So I wasn't too worried about that. But I ended up running Choice Scarf on my Latios for that reason, and it worked out largely.
So you mind if I ask a question real quick?
Yeah, go for it.
I imagine we're probably getting towards the end of this topic and we're going to move on soon. But the thing is, I'm curious to ask you guys who have done more than one of these drafts. I did my first draft, honestly, I think one of the things that I missed out on thinking about, but kind of drafted to in kind of a lucky fashion, was speed tiers. How much do you guys think about speed tiers when you're drafting? Do you think like, are you trying to get a distribution? Are you trying to get a lot of fast mons? Are you trying to like?
I was thinking about it. Only because season 1 the meta was hyper offense. Like hyper offense was doing really well in season 1 because Adamant's team, yeah.
There's a reason Coco had like 20 plus kills in season 1.
Yeah, and it was because speed was kind of the meta then. Now, with all that speed being spread out amongst 16 coaches this season, the pickings were a lot more slim for hyper offense. So it's actually been tending more towards balance, as we talked about earlier. I definitely took speed tiers into account, but I was drafting stall, so I didn't care about speed tiers because the whole point of stall is to not care about speed tiers. Everything you have is going to be slower than everything else.
I was
When
about
your
to say,
fastest mon is base 65 with
Right.
Scissor.
Yeah, exactly. Like I wasn't considering speed tiers overtly much in my planning. Now I would, and for next season I will definitely be considering speed tiers.
it's definitely a thought process when I'm like building my list, but like when it comes to actually drafting, I usually just completely forget about it, which
Yeah.
is an issue. But that's for another topic, another episode.
Now,
Yeah, that's something that I want to think about. All right, go ahead, Clutch.
I think when you're drafting speed tiers, I think one of the hardest speed tiers to prep for, just from experience, is when you have really collected speed tiers, like your offense is above 110 and your bulk is below 50.
Yeah.
Because it's so hard to figure out where to mesh your mons
Mm-hmm.
between their speed tiers.
Yeah, and that's kind of where my team is at right now, which is
because
nice.
you want to be able to, because you want to break through a Chansey, but you can't bring a Scarfer, but you have to bring a Scarfer for something like Lottie. So you
Mhm.
can't just run Scarf something to break through sub whatever to break through Chansey, because then you get revenge killed by Lottie.
And it falls into
So it's really,
yeah. You want balance with your speed tiers. I think it's one of the better ways to go.
I think you want. I mean, in my opinion, I think one of the better speed tiers just gradually. I think you want 10 to 15 point gaps.
Yeah.
On average,
Mm-hmm.
ranging I think from like 115. I think is a good solid high. If you can get higher than that, that's great. 115 to like 70. I think you want a nice gap, a nice solid 10 to 15 point gap between everywhere, so you can cover.
Yes.
In those areas.
That was what I was thinking as well, and I think an important point is that you don't just want fast mons; you want a distribution.
Yes. Because if you have all fast mons, it's really easy to just like if I was running against a team that had like fragile speedsters, like all they had was super hyper fragile speedsters, I would just bring all my walls.
I mean, let's look at like the Rowlets that are no longer in the league, but they drafted Mega Beedrill, Kartana, Blacephalon, Jolteon.
Yawn. Jellicent.
They had an average speed of their first 7 of 101, with Florges being the lowest.
Jeez.
And Florges is no slow mon at 75 either.
Yeah.
And they went 0-4.
Right.
Like, not all of that was because of their roster, but their roster was like, it was difficult to prepare for, but it didn't perform well.
Yeah.
And like it was all glass cannon stuff.
Yeah.
And like their first 4 opponents were Adam, Santoro, Excessive, and Sam. Like,
all who had balanced rosters.
I think glass cannons are a liability in the draft format.
I think so
and
too.
if you draft a glass cannon, you really have to focus on protecting it, and you cannot let it do anything.
Well, yeah, and the closest thing to a glass cannon that I would draft is Volcarona, and Volcarona is not a real glass cannon. The thing that I would consider Volcarona being on the edge is because it's got that 4x stealth rock weakness. And but like when you're talking,
it is
yeah. Oof.
It is one of those things you have to really be reliable with, and I can't let them get rock step ever on me, or else I lose 50% of my Volcarona.
Well, and like like with Kartana, because the thing is with Kartana, yeah, it's got good physical defense, but its HP is very low. So even if it rolls in on rocks, you don't have a lot of HP to be tanking rock switch ins with. So if I
And also, like,
if I force you to
HP
pivot,
fire is
yeah, well, and
HP fire is so easily teched on Kartana.
Mm-hmm. Well, and all I have to do, like, even if I don't have HP fire, which I would if I was dealing with Kartana, but all I have to do is make you switch in and out enough, and then you're just suddenly goozling yourself. Like, you're not gonna be, then all it takes is one hit from pretty much anything to knock you out. One special hit. It doesn't even have to be stab. It could just be any special move that Kartana's going down.
It's true. I know this calc just because if you take a regular Steelix with no attack, no special attack investment, no boosting nature or anything, and just put an HP fire, it will kill Kartana straight up.
Right. So that's why, yeah, you're right, and that's why I agree with you. Glass cannons generally don't work very well in draft. There's too many things that can tank a hit and then deal a killing hit back to you.
And that's a topic for a later episode as well. But like, having a glass cannon isn't always a bad thing. Having too many is definitely a bad thing.
Yeah, I guess that's
true.
Well, it's everything in moderation. Balance, as we are finding out swiftly, is the key here.
Because, like, I would say Weavile is definitely a glass cannon, and I think it's one of my better ones this season.
Well, yeah, Weavile did good work for me last season. I liked Weavile. I picked it up late, a little too late to do anything for my team, but it did work while it was with my team. So real quick, because we are kind of finish out this topic. The last thing I want to touch on, though, and it's kind of important. It doesn't come up a lot in our league, but when it does come up, it comes up big, and that is Z crystals. And when do you draft a Z crystal? The answer is towards the end.
Or
unless it's
it's a Z captain system, which I prefer personally, just because it's more, you can get more creative with it.
I don't know, maybe, and we might change it to that system, and that'll be something, because I think once this season ends, we're definitely gonna do a post about possible rule changes, things that are going to be up on the table for discussion, and what our personal views on those things are. Because there's definitely a lot of things to discuss right now. Because changing to a Z captain system is one thing that'll be put on the table for discussion. Tier changes, obviously, and franchise picking and the rules regarding that, we're going to be going into in great detail.
The first Z crystal was round 8,
which I think was pretty.
It's a reach.
It's a bit of a reach.
Michael grabbing Psychium?
No, before that was Flyinium. Drew, or excessive.
Oh, he had bird spam. He did have bird spam. So.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, you can pick a Z crystal earlier if it does a lot of work for your team. Like, if it's only going to be used on one mon, might not want to pick it. Or if you don't really have a good group of Z carriers, like my team, before I did any free agent transactions or anything like that, my team had no good Z move users, really. Because it was all bulk all the time, which backfired horrifically, as we've gone over to great length. But yeah, so I just wanted to cover it because that is a question someone would probably bring up, and I thought we should just briefly go over Z crystals now. The difference with, go over Z captain system real quick, because that is something that is commonly used.
The Z captain system, you get your two. I know the more common systems, your 2 mons. You can use Z crystals. And then you get your offensive Z users. I know there's variations on that. There's the GBA Z point system, where you have correct me if I'm wrong here, I think it's 100 points, and I think tier 1s are 80 and tier 5s are 20 and everything else in between. So you can distribute those accordingly to your mons to use Z crystals. So if you have a tier 1, you have to use a tier 5 as your other mon.
Right. And so
I think so it allows you to Z something like Latios, or in my case, something like my case would be like I can Z up on Terrakion or Azumarill.
Okay, I actually like that, the point system. I think doing straight Z captains, which was what was originally suggested at the beginning of the season, which is just to have here your captains. I didn't like that as much, but I like the point system better. But we'll go into that later. That we're getting off track here. So moving on to the unless someone
one last thing with the Z's is because you were talking about how picking up the Flyinium Z with all that flying was not a bad idea. for if Sam would have picked up Gracium Z in round 4 instead of Toxapex after he already had Tapu Bulu and Heatran, that would not have been too early, in my opinion.
Right.
Because both of those with grass is fantastic.
Yeah, they have good utilization on both of those. So that Z crystals are weird if you're drafting them the way we did. It's kind of hard to figure out when you should draft them, and it's very team dependent on what you've got so far. With that in mind, one last thing I want to say before we switch topics is the last pitfall you don't want to fall into is just having 11 mons. You have your awesome, well-constructed synergies, and that's all you have is just 11 mon. Like, you have it's a really good draft list. It's a really good start for a draft list. But if you don't have secondary and tertiary picks for some of those mons, you're going to suffer because those mons are going to get picked out from under you, and you're not going to have any idea what you're supposed to do next. So moving on from that topic, the next topic that we're going to talk about, we're going to move on to our RDL topics. So those of you who don't care about the RDL, feel free to tune out now. But I hope you stick around because I feel like we at least make it entertaining enough discussing it that you would want to stick around for that. And that's the divisional playoff race because we can start talking about that now. We're getting close enough to I think we can start really getting into the nitty-gritty of that. So Omega's not here. He handled the Johto region, and Pac's in the Johto division. So Pac, why don't you lead us off with the Johto division playoff race?
All right. Well, there's going to be some spoilers from this week 9, just because all of them have been done in the past 2 days, past 3 days, I guess.
Well, this isn't going to go up until Sunday at noon, so it won't be too spoilery.
That's true. So right now we actually have a very interesting playoff race because we've got the New York Lynx that are 5-4 after losing. But they have the tiebreaker win over Indianapolis, who's also 5-4. Indianapolis has the tiebreaker over Ohio, who is now 4-5, but they've got the tiebreaker over New York. So the upcoming divisional matches again will be big for that. And then in fourth place, Detroit got their first win of the season.
Yay!
Yay! I can win games. I'm not completely horrible at Pokemon.
Hey, hold up. You can win a game.
But it's in my notes.
I won games last season.
I've got tiebreakers, and then just for Detroit, I just have because
basically at this point, everyone else has to lose every single game, and I have to win every single game for me to even be considered a possible playoff candidate for our division. It's an uphill battle, and one that I will. It's a challenge I will gladly take and probably fail.
Yeah, I'm here just as a Johto division member as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Johto division kind of took over the podcast today.
Yeah, we're all. Yeah, we got 3 of us here. Dang.
We got most of the Johto division.
It's going to be interesting to see because like we do have that three-way tiebreaker where Michael has it over me, I have it over Pac, and Pac has it over Michael.
Right. It's a very tight race. I think it's the tightest playoff race of the league right now.
Oh yeah. If I had to choose a single match that was like most crucial for me, it's going to be snagging the tie break with Ohio because I've got the lead in differential there.
Right.
One with him, that really improves things in terms of like if we end up tied at the end. Yeah. And the same goes for Pac. Pac's going to be out for me because if he can get the differential lead over me, especially with a win.
Yeah, that's one thing I won't win on is differential because I've got 2 0-6 games under my belt. My differential is basically screwed from week 2. So let's move on. We skipped down to the Johto division, but let's move back up to the Kanto division with Clutch, our Kanto correspondent.
Okay, so the Kanto, Santoro, who took a humongous just leaps and bounds over the division, just took that lead so early. They have taken a couple L's last couple weeks. Their result this week has not been decided yet, so we're hanging on the 6-2 right now. After starting 6-0, I believe. Someone correct me if I'm wrong.
You're good.
6-0.
Okay, so they started 6-0 and they've dropped their last two to very good teams. There's no shame in dropping to the Clinks and EC, which was a fantastic match. The second one. So they're trying to get back in the wagon, but it opened the door for excessive in the Dracos, and Adam I think Adam could, if he has things break his way and he can find ways to win. It will be tough though, but it opened the door for those two to potentially take the division lead.
Yeah.
If they can keep winning, and because I think excessive actually does have a shot taking division if he can continue to win, because he would have one more match with Santoro.
Yeah, if he can continue to win. And so that'll be interesting to follow in the upcoming weeks. And I think maybe 2 weeks from now, we'll do another playoff report. I don't think we need to do it weekly, but definitely I think maybe every 2 weeks, we'll kind of do a brief report on these. Because the playoff races, for the most part, especially for the number 2 slots, in
are very tight.
Every division, that second slot is... We're talking one game different. All it's going to take is one game to possibly.
It's all on tiebreaker. I think most of it's on tiebreakers right now.
Yeah, most of it's on tiebreakers right now. And speaking of
and
that,
just to clarify, it's the top one of each division,
right,
and then the next 2. So, like, as of right or before week 9, the top 4 for the Sun Conference would have been Santoro, Sam, myself, and then Michael,
right,
with excessive being number 5. So he would have been out of the playoffs there.
Yeah. So let's move on. So we've done Kanto, we've done Johto. Let's move on to the Hoenn division with
All right.
Sam.
I feel like I can talk about this one.
Yeah.
So our other kind of about our top picks for coach of the season, Santoro is up there. And I think that the match between Omega and Santoro was something that we talked up a whole bunch. It was a big deal. And a week ago when we were doing this, it was up for dispute still.
Mm-hmm.
But Omega took a loss to Pac this week. And, same thing as Santoro's losses. There's really no shame in that. I mean,
right.
Amount of good teams that we have in this league that are 5-4 right now. And speaking of that, at the top of the Hoenn division, but we've got Clutch and Rochester with Andrew and Nick, both at 5-4 right now. Clutch has the lead. First off, he has the tiebreaker with Rochester,
and I have the head-to-head, and I have the differential.
Yeah, you've got the advantage in both of those. I mean, Andrew's going to try and hang around, or Andrew and Nick are going to try and hang around for their wild card slot, but
yeah,
the competition is going to be over with, Redstone, or sorry, I guess not Redstone anymore, always Meta, and LA Chargebugs.
Mm-hmm.
Advantage in differential, and those two teams play next week actually. So that's actually low-key a big match. Is Meta versus Rochester next week.
Mm-hmm.
Will be a tiebreaker that decides the last wild card slot. I mean, I was about to jump over to the Alola division, and we have Nadia at the back of Hoenn.
There's potential, I think she can still make it, but
it's gonna. With the loss today, she's definitely in a worse position, but she could still bring it back.
She's more on the spoiler route, I think now.
Yeah, exactly. I have to play Nadia for the last match of the season, and that's low key. That's going to be an important one for me to try and close out.
The Hoenn division rematches are going to be very intense.
Yes,
because with Omega taking the loss this week, his schedule certainly doesn't get any easier.
No, and I think in general, divisional rematches are going to be a big deal. But I think in particular, Johto and Hoenn, it's going to be crucial. Those matches are going to be most of those matches are going to be very close. They're going to be difficult, grueling matches, and it's going to be awesome to watch.
Yeah.
Like we're in for a super entertaining second half to this season.
Yeah, I think that also, just to finish out this Hoenn division, I think that Rochester is a team that got better with some of their
Free agent
and with some of their
picks.
trades.
Very true.
I think that
I mean,
I also think
the
that
start of the assist.
yeah, I also think that Kansas City is in the same boat. I think both of those teams have gotten better since the outset, and I think that I do agree that like C has gotten a little bit better, but I think that a lot of their I think the move for like Thunderous over Salamence and Lucaria and everything improved them or maybe tuned them up a little bit, but I don't think they improved as much as Kansas City and Rochester did.
Yeah, and well, to be fair, if you like with only two losses now under their belt,
You don't need to improve. If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
right?
Like,
And we'll see if that remains true going through the rest of this season. So going into the Alola division, we've got Neek as the clear front runner, and Neek's been
actually has the highest differential of any player right now.
Right.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, Neek is killing it right now. If I go over to
Literally.
if I go over to their like, let's see, they had 2 losses, one in the past couple weeks, and the 2 losses were to the Chicago Taurus, which was really close.
Well, that was a great match to watch.
That's the thing; both of their losses were super close. The other one was against Rochester 2 weeks ago. So they definitely got they picked up some massive wins over some really good teams. And then they also beat me. But but it should be noted that 2 of their wins are forfeits. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Neek has the skills to maintain the I mean, their differential is a pretty clear sign. They've got the skills to pay the bills. I think they're going to maintain that top slot for a while. Chargebugs could sneak up on them. I think the Chargebugs are definitely in a position to do that. Again, it's going to come down to those interdivision rematches. Chicago can sneak into that wild card slot, maybe, but I think Philadelphia, they do have an outside chance. I think they're pretty close to out of it. All it's going to take is maybe 1 or 2 more losses, and I think they're pretty much done for, and they're just in spoiler territory at that point.
Yeah. Real quick, I hope that Whitehawk sticks around for another season. I want to see him start with a with the team that he built
with the team what they built themselves. Yeah, because look at what they've done with the team that they had. Because frankly, and I mean, no disrespect towards the previous coach of that team, but that team was a mess. That team was an unfocused mess, and they made their. We have a rule when a coach takes over a team that they can ditch any 6 Pokemon from that team that they want, and as long as the roster fits the roster rules, they can switch. Basically, they get 6 free agent trades essentially. Like just right then and there on the spot, they can do 6 free agent trades. And Whitehawk definitely put the team back on the right course. And I would definitely want to see what Whitehawk could do with just a team they drafted themselves. So I do hope they stick around as well.
Real quick, kudos to him for swapping in with the old roster,
right?
Playing an excellent Detroit team on short notice and giving them a hell of a
gave them a match.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really entertaining game. For a while, I thought that he had the momentum was pretty clearly in his favor.
And then just swapped, and it was kind of ridiculous.
And I will say, as far as the divisions go, most of these divisions, it's like very, very hotly contested for playoff positions still. But I think the most clear picture that we've got out of all the divisions right now, I think Alola has the clearest picture. I think that what we see here, with the exception of maybe Storm and the Chargebug, like Chicago and the Chargebugs flipping positions, I think this is pretty much how their division might shake out. Again, Whitehawk could switch with Storm. Meta could switch with Storm. It's still possible, and again, it's going to come down to those interdivision rematches, but I still think that this is pretty close to how it's going to shake out in the coming season, which is Gliscor's at the top, followed up by the Chargebugs, then Chicago, and then Philadelphia. Go ahead.
Is that just about everything?
Yeah. There is one.
To talk about numbers.
Yes. See, we're going to be talking. The next topic that we want to talk about for the RDL is we've done All-Star voting this week, and Sam here has been in charge of that. So Sam, take it away.
I'm super excited about this because it's just fun to watch the numbers come in. I love charts and love looking at people voting on things. So it's also exciting because I get to see everyone's individual responses and feel like I'm, Mark Zuckerberg over here. But
are you gonna get interrogated by the Senate soon?
Hope not. It's for some BS about how many votes Snorlax is getting. The
Russians were involved.
The Russians were involved. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to give just a brief rundown of what we're doing, a minute or less, and then talk about the numbers for the first week of voting.
Yep.
All of this stuff tomorrow, probably a little bit after the podcast posts, but we're selecting 8 Pokemon from each conference, the Sun Conference and the Moon Conference, to be RDL All-Stars, based not really on Pokemon, but how well they have performed in the league this season. We're reserving 2 slots at a very minimum for Tier 4 and Tier 5s, so that Pokemon that are kind of territory can still qualify as All-Stars, and we do have a couple of really deserving nominations there. First, real quick. So I'm going to talk about the Sun Conference first. We have 13 votes in as of now out of 16 coaches. And leading the pack for that group is, as anyone might guess, Snorlax. Not a question. It has coaches. 8 have selected Snorlax as an All-Star. That's double. It's far away to first. It's got 8 votes. All of the ones that are tied for second have 4. Snorlax at this point looking like a shoo-in. Snorlax put in a whole lot of work at the beginning of the season. The free recycle sets that Santoro has run have wrecked at least 2 teams. I know it rolled through the Atlanta Rowlets. I think it also beat beat Excessive correctly, or it certainly did work on his team.
Yeah, it was brutal.
So in second place, we've got a 4-way tie. We've got 4 Pokemon with 4 votes apiece. What we've got is Zygarde 50%. We've got Weavile. We've got Milotic, another Santoromon, Bulu.
Yeah. So that's so the second place is really close, but I still wholeheartedly agree with Snorlax taking the front so far. It's been an offensive terror this season.
For sure.
It's been a game changer. So
yeah. I also agree with the selection of things Milotic, I think Santoro is going to be one of the teams that has
the most All-Stars, or pretty close to it.
And by the way, one of the stipulations put in here is that no team can have more than 2.
Right.
So
I think he's going to be one of the teams that has 2, though.
Yeah, no question. I think Weavile is deserving of a nomination. Zygarde 50 is certainly also deserving.
Yeah.
And the last one is Tapu Bulu, which I can speak for it, is
Yep.
I've never really used the Mon before this season, and it's been a really important part of my core defensively, and it certainly finished a couple games out for me.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll reveal right now, I voted for Melodic because that thing, he's been using that He's been using it to wall out better than most of my walls, and my team was all walls. So coming from a connoisseur of usage of bulk, Melodic was the usage of Melodic was top tier, and I want to see it in that all-star team. I think it deserves that spot.
And the last, the last set of things that I want to talk about. There are a couple things that have one vote, a couple nominees that don't have any votes at this point. There's a bunch of mons that are tied with 2 votes apiece. And right now those are Rotom Wash, Gyarados, Latios, and Mega Pinsir.
Mega Pinsir's been really good this season.
Yeah.
Mega.
So right now, if we had the 6 slots for Sun Conference, the 6 upper slots, so to speak, filled, it would be Snorlax, Tapu Bulu, Milotic, Weavile, Zygarde 50, and one of Rotom Wash, Gyarados, Latios, or Mega Pinsir.
I would say Mega Pinsir would probably be my pick out of those.
9 kills is no joke.
Yeah.
It's put in work, man.
But it's also the only Mega.
Yeah.
That is true.
So, on real quick to the 2. Stay within the Sun Conference and kind of scroll down here and talk about the Tier 4, Tier 5 voting.
All right.
Our nominees for that category are Rhyperior, Beware, Electivire, Meloetta, Jellicent, and Beheeyem. Now it's Rhyperior's show in terms of the votes for that section. It's got 46% of the votes. That's 6 out of 13. Actually, every other mon that I listed has gotten at least 1 vote, with Meloetta and Jellicent getting 2. I think that Jellicent is a sleeper pick here as well. I think that Jellicent deserves a nomination in this conference.
I think Jellicent deserves a nomination. I really like Jellicent. As, again, someone who's a connoisseur of bulk, Jellicent has... I have fond memories of it when I had it. I still think... I'm not so certain about it. I think that Meloetta might be a better pick. But...
yeah.
We'll see how it goes. We're gonna see how everyone votes out for that. I will say Rhyperior definitely clear front runner.
Oh, easy.
It's in like the top 3 or top 2 for MVP race right now.
It's number 2 in MVP race right now. Plus, we'll just drop to +7. But even still,
yeah,
it's still number 2.
Yeah, kudos to Mike to really taking that tier 5 and running with it. He's been utilizing it very well.
Tier 4.
Or tier 4.
Tier 4.
Right.
Tier 4.
I keep forgetting it's Rhydon that's tier 5.
Rhydon's still very good too.
Yes, Rhydon is very good. I actually considered picking it up. But go on.
Let's talk about the Moon Conference real quick. This one has 3 front runners.
I like it.
Points to anyone who can guess what one of them is.
Maybe Crocodile.
I think Marv might be an accurate assumption.
Jeez, it couldn't possibly be the Devil Croc.
Anyone has yeah. Who knew that the Hamburglar's favorite Pokemon would be the front runner? We've got Crook. Crook is actually edging out Snorlax for most votes out of anyone. It has 9 out of 13 votes.
How can you not vote for Marv? It's Marv.
It's more of a curiosity as to who are the 4 people who didn't vote for Marv.
Probably.
How many votes did Rhyperior have?
Had 6, I believe. Yeah, 6. Which I think is just people maybe not being familiar with the monster that is Rhyperior, the artist formerly known as Rhyperior.
The artist formerly known as Rhyperior.
But anyways, we've got Marv at the front, Marv the Crocodile. But trailing it with 8 votes out of 13 is Megalodios.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'll agree
that thing has been a
so.
force. Absolute force.
Well, and I think Season 1 coaches also still have a little bit of PTSD from Megalodios last season, because that thing was a demon.
I had no issues with Megalodios. Choice
I had
band and
no issues with
Donphin.
Megaladios.
Well, it says the
choice-
guy who
choice
had
band
Megaladios.
Choice band and Donphin. That was a good set.
Yeah, for context, yeah, Clutch, you had Choice Band, Donphin, and Tapu Koko as well, and Pack actually had Megaladios.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
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 For reference, Megaladios was the front runner on kills for majority of that season.
Yeah, and then Coco said,
And yeah, and then came the reign of Coco, and everything was awful again.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So
Yeah.
got Crocodile at the top. We've got Megaladios, and following on Megaladios' coattails with 6 votes out of 13, Kyurem Black.
Also
Yeah.
powerhouse.
all these are expected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no real surprises here.
Yeah. Yeah, and the rest. So those 3 stick out. I'll post the charts tomorrow. You guys will see that. Those are the 3 lead vote getters far and away. Fourth place in Moon Conference voting right now only has 3 votes, and it's Tapu Koko.
Interesting.
I think it would have more votes if it had been used more. Because as of now, it's actually kind of had a season because it still wreaked havoc, but it certainly hasn't logged 20 kills.
Well, I mean, it's been brought to 7 games out of 9. It's only got 3 kills and 5 deaths. Like,
yeah,
I'm actually kind of surprised right now that it's even like up there, considering. But
I think,
I mean, it is a threat.
Maybe a little bit of recency bias.
Yeah, it might be as well.
And the last thing is tied for the 5th and 6th slots. We have a 3-way tie for 3 Mons that have 2 votes apiece. You, Victini, and Alolan Ninetales.
See, I expected Mimikyu to be higher. I was one of the people who voted for Mimikyu. And I guess, I would normally pick Coco over Mimikyu, but Mimikyu's had more of an offensive presence this season than Coco has.
Yeah, and you want to know something that's really crazy is that after all the nominations came in, I went through and added a couple Pokemon to each list that I thought were like power here. But there were a couple things where I just needed to add a couple Pokemon to each list to kind of balance it out a little bit so that it wasn't, so that one roster didn't have way more Pokemon than the other for voting. Add Mimikyu. Like, that thing didn't get nominated. It gets no respect.
Mimikyu don't get no respect.
Apparently
It's
not.
been getting, I think it's been kind of sneaky. People don't realize, like...
Oh, I realized.
Yeah,
I realized very painfully.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm gonna throw a little bit of bias out there because I'm the coach of the team, but like Terrakion and Reuniclus.
Oh yeah.
Those things deserve votes, I think.
Terrakion's in 5th in the MVP race, and it has the same differential as Mimikyu.
Yeah.
But it has no votes.
Yeah. I do agree. I think that recency bias does come into it. I do think that a lot, especially coaches from last season do remember the reign of terror of the Coco. So we know what the potential for Coco could be.
What we're seeing here is kind of a saturation effect due to the fact that, like, I think that what I would like to encourage real quick before, and I was going to kind of put this at the end of the segment, but I'm going to say it right now. Voting this upcoming week, we're going to have 2 more weeks of voting. I'd encourage you to vote for, look down the list, try to remember what you voted for last week, and look for other things that you think are deserving.
Yeah.
If we get to this time next week and it's just like, Crocodile, Kyurem Black, and Megalodios have just doubled their votes, you want to vote for them again. It's fine if you think that they're that deserving and you want to see them in.
Right. Like, I could totally understand voting again for Crocodile because it's been very standout this season.
And, but yeah, I think that there are things like, what you see in this conference right now is that, I mean, for heaven's sakes, it's 3 Pokemon that have like try and do
Double
the mental
digit
math.
kills.
I mean, it's 3 Pokemon account for like the total votes. And I mean, there were 19 options in that conference. Like,
Yeah,
it was very centralized.
Mimikyu's 4th right now in the MVP leaderboard with a +6 differential, which is the same as Kyra and Black.
Well, I'm gonna move on to the last bit here,
Yep.
which is the tier 4 and tier 5s for the Moon Conference. And right now, what we have, guess who's in the lead here?
Gee.
I wonder if it's Keck.
The
Yeah.
other terrifying lizard of RDL this season.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Kecleon got 7 of a possible 13 votes this week.
Yeah.
So
That doesn't
most people
surprise
are in
me.
agreement that if they had to pick a single tier 5 or tier 4 to tier 5 Mon in the Moon Conference to be an all-star, it's Kecleon.
I can
It
agree
even
with
managed-
that assessment.
Yeah, it even managed to edge out Hyperior in terms of total votes. Other vote getters in the conference are Incineroar with 3 votes, Exploud with 2, and Bronzong with 1.
I think I voted. I think I was one of the votes for Exploud. Exploud's been doing pretty decent.
Exploud is a nuke.
Yeah, well, I know it.
It may not. It may not. It has 5 kills, which is still a pretty good number.
To be fair, though, I think if I remember correctly, most of those kills were against me. So maybe I'm biased because it just ruined me. I think 3 of those kills were against me.
Yeah, Cossack doesn't hate pick; he hate votes.
Yeah.
That's
I
a good way to vote.
well, I mean, I've seen what it can do. Like, and it will surprise you if you haven't run into it yet, which is possible because it's only been brought to 4 games, so it's very possible you haven't run into it yet. If you do, kill it quick. Do yourself a favor.
You have to prep for it.
Yeah, I didn't, which is why I lost to it. So that was one of my bigger defeats over the past few weeks.
To get around Exploud is to be scheduled such that you never play the team that has it.
I mean, that's the best way. I wish I could have had that. I wish I could have been scheduled around a lot of teams, not having to face them. It's a pity it's a pity that I have such a stacked division.
Yeah, does anyone, let's see. I mean, does anyone have any comments about, I mean, we all have stuff to say about Marv, and we talked about Marv last week with the Reign of Terror and everything.
Yeah.
Anyone was like, I mean, maybe Pac, you could speak to, like, have you watched some of the games where Kecleon was played?
I've only watched a few of the games where Keck played.
Okay. Well, like, because the thing that I've seen with it is just that, like, Andrew and Nick have done a really good job of playing that thing.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it kind of boils down to for a lot of these mons, though. Like, Snorlax is a good example. Like, again, Crocodile is a good example. These are mons that, like, on your normal generic team, on your with your normal generic trainers, they're not going to do as well. It takes, like, someone who intimately knows how the Pokemon works and how that Pokemon fits into their team strategy to utilize them properly and bring out their full potential. Same with Rhyperior.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about Kecleon is that, like, it's not the main threat on that team.
Right, it slides under the radar.
You have things like Mew, Mega Manectric, Mienshao, Breloom that you have to care about before you even start planning for Kecleon, because Kecleon's going to hit you with stab no matter what he hits you with.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the real thing with Kecleon is you almost can't really plan for Kecleon effectively.
I mean, a fast fighting type that can pick it off before it changes form, I guess.
Yeah, well, yeah, basically you want Breloom. It's a pity that Breloom is on the same team as Kecleon.
Yeah, you want to bring something that outspeeds it, and you want to bring something with coverage for its common moves.
Yeah, and that's about the extent that you can plan for it. Which is
want to be low key. You want to be hitting it on the physical side. That thing.
Yeah.
Clutch pointed out, based 120 special defense.
Yeah,
nobody knows about that if they don't look it up.
Right,
and that team is just stacked with special defense. with
Yep.
Yeah.
Mantine and Gudra as well.
Gudra.
Gudra
Something tells me
is,
that after Kiram poked a giant hole in his team last time we played, that he went out and got Gudra just so it doesn't happen again.
yeah, I mean that's definitely
And his speedy, like he's done well in terms of like the things that really. I played Rochester yesterday, and the things that gave me trouble. The guy's got Mega Manectric. He didn't even have to bring it against me. He brought Scarfed Salazzle, which ended up kind of winning him the game.
Outspends your entire team. It's a good bring.
Outspent my entire team, Scarfed or no.
all right.
With the exception of if I had been able to get a boost up, but that's
Yeah. So
that's the All Stars real
Yeah.
quick. I know we're kind of diverging from topic. I apologize.
yeah, no, don't worry about it. I mean, we're probably gonna run a little long this week, but that's fine. Because we're gonna be
It's
talking.
tradition before too long.
Yeah, maybe I'll just say that this is like we'll try and keep these under an hour and a half, but I think we'll work out. We might just I think the reason these past two took so long, real quick, because this is kind of digressing and also making this longer, is we've had a lot to talk about for the RDL.
It's very true.
In coming weeks, I think we'll shorten it to like one topic for the RDL, because I think next week we'll probably talk again. We'll see how the voting has continued to progress, and otherwise there really isn't anything to talk about, because I don't want to talk about divisional playoff races every single week, and so we can probably alternate that or something like that. We'll figure it out later, though. That's something to figure out off the air, so to speak. So our last,
However, if you do want to read about the divisional playoff races, check out the my
right.
blog.
Yep, and I'll post a link to that in the description of this. Definitely check it out. It's a great resource just in general, but it's also a good source of news on the league.
One last thing, actually on the topic of All Stars, I am interested in seeing some of the newer picks, seeing how they do in the next few weeks. Like,
Right.
because Halucha got 4 kills this week.
Right,
Yeah.
and
Oh, jeez.
like Quagsire got a kill in the past match, so I mean,
You need to run Choice Band Quagsire like
I mean,
at least once.
it might happen. We'll see. So moving on. Speaking of bulky Pokemon like Quagsire, we're gonna talk to possibly one of the we're gonna talk to this Mon. He's here in the studio with us. No, we're gonna be talking about our Mon of the week, which this week is a Megamon, and we mentioned it briefly earlier. It's MagneZONE. It's of the Megas. If I had to choose, like if I was drafting like a bulk team, and I couldn't get Mega Sableye because either somebody else picked it or whatever, MagneZONE would be my next pick after that, because he's got Filter, which basically means that there is nothing super effective against him, because it reduces the incoming it reduces damage from all special effective attacks by 1/4, which basically negates the special effective bonus damage, and he's got ridiculously high defense, and on top of that, he's Steel type. There's not a lot that's special effective against him anyway, and he's got really good resistances. So he's just a very bulky Mon that has high attack.
Just for reference, just on that bulk scale, I was running a calc just to have fun. Garchomp to kill with Earthquake on a max defense at MagneZONE, you have to go to +5 with no boosting item to kill it.
And that's partially with Filter, because as Costco was saying, with being a Steel type, and with Filter, he's got 13 types that do half damage to him, 1 that he's immune to, and 4 that are neutral. Everything else is, there was nothing else. It's either neutral or half, or it's poison, and it doesn't do anything. So you're not hitting this thing for super effective damage ever.
And honestly, your best bet is going at this thing with special attack. But even then, it's still going to be tough, because it doesn't have like super high special defense. It has high enough with its ability special defense, though, that it's going to still be a tough cookie to crack.
But 284 is not bad in Spadef if you max it out.
Right.
And even if you run no investment no defensive investment at all, it still hits 496 at level 100, which is
ridiculously high. Which is why that's usually one of the sets you run. Also, but we've talked about the defense on this thing. He can hit hard though.
140 attack again, no joke, and with moves like Avalanche and
Heavy
one of the
slam.
hardest, one of the hardest hitting heavy slams in the entire, just in general.
It's practically guaranteed to be base 120.
And to put it in perspective, 36 for attack.
Yeah.
So this is hitting harder than that.
Right. And so it's a really good option for bulky offense teams. He can set Stealth Rock too, and he will live to set that Stealth Rock. You can almost guarantee that.
It eats a mega low punny high jump kick without any investment. With max HP, it eats 1 for sure. It's like an 89% chance to 2-hit KO.
Yeah, so he's gonna get those Stealth Rocks off. If you need something to guarantee drop Stealth Rocks for your team, good option. Also, because of his extremely high defenses and his pretty decent offensive, his pretty decent attack, he's very difficult to set up against. Because you can set up against him, but unless you're buffing your physical defense along with that, you're gonna get hit hard.
Or you're just gonna throw toxic on you, and you're gonna be on a timer.
Yeah.
And I think that it's also worth noting, MagneZONE is one of the Pokemon that benefits pretty substantially from having been around for a couple gens.
Right.
And having, gens worth of move tutors.
Yes, definitely.
This thing has low key has an excellent move pool.
Yep.
Mental punches. It's got dragon coverage with Dragon Claw. Clutch mentioned it has Avalanche. And also something that got brought up last week is excellent recipient of Wish Pass.
Yes, definitely.
Something of its own.
If you pair it with Alomomola or Vaporeon, they can just coming on the special attackers and take hits that aren't electric type.
Yeah, and you could do that with Chansey too.
Wish.
Or
just
not...
throw these fat wishes back to MagneZONE and make it legitimately unkillable if you can't break through both of them.
MagneZONE has a low enough hit points that you're going to recover quite a bit from a wish from, like, say, Vaporeon or Alomomola.
Or yeah,
Alomomola is so annoying to deal with wishes. I think it's so much HP to get back.
And then you also got like Clefable if you're looking for a tier 1 like core to run with Aggron. Because Aggron resists poison, obviously resists steel.
So it's one of those nice mods, the Steel Dragon Fairy Core. I considered drafting it if Clefable fell to me, but it didn't.
Right. I almost considered drafting it over Mega Sableye. I still think Mega Sableye was the better pick overall, especially now with the current state that my team is in. But Mega Aggron, I had to resist. Because
that's going very thoroughly the bulky offense direction, right?
Yeah.
Just for reference here, Alomola's Wish from like just a standard OU Wish Pass set, I guess, would pass 122 HP.
Yeah.
Which if you pass that to a Mega Aggron, which has at max HP 176.
It's guaranteed. Yeah, exactly. Its health is just.
You literally bring it all the way back up.
It's like, how does it feel having full restores? Especially if you have a cleric on your team too, something that has like Heal Bell or Aromatherapy. Like you get Serena on your team with this thing, and a Wish Passer, and good luck.
It doesn't die. It just doesn't.
Like you're gonna have to break the core quickly, or you
have to plow. You need to have some. If you don't have anything like stall break or something to deal with it, you do not break it.
Yeah,
honestly, you don't need an aromatherapy, because one of the big sets you can run with it is Curse, Rest, Sleep Talk, and Heavy Slam.
Oh my God, it has a Crocoon set. God, I forgot about that. It has a Krogron set.
I mean, you can also just run, if you're really feeling gutsy with it, you can run offensive like Rock Polish.
Yeah, or you could run a Totemize as well. Although
Because
that would
I thought it would lower your heavy slam.
it
so
would
you don't
lower,
rock
lower
polish,
your heavy
so-
slam, but sometimes depending on what you're doing, that might not be necessarily the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, true. Because a lot of good. One of the best ways to beat it is low kick because it's so heavy.
Yup. Yeah. Well, welcome to weaknesses shared with Stack Attacka.
Low kick.
Today we discuss
course.
low kick, which, as
So
I
you
found
make-
out, can be put on just about everything.
I hear it's real good.
Yeah. Pack would know about low kick. And yeah, but still, it's still a good pickup. And depending on what your mega tiers are looking like, in our league, it's a tier 2, so you're getting extra free points for that. So if it fits with your team, you're looking for, something that's bulky and can hit hard, that's difficult to kind of set up on, good wish pass recipient. If that fits for your team, pick it up. Get those extra free points. Pick up another tier 2 or another tier 3. There's lots of good clerics in tier 3. So that's something to consider.
It's worth noting that, I mean, it's one of the few really viable mono steals.
Yes. Because because of its ability, really.
Because of filter, but just in general, dude, there's really like mono steals that exist. MagneZONE. RCS and Silvally with it's, and then the Clang evolutionary trade. That's it.
Well, and that's because there's very few pure steel types in general. Majority of the steel types, a vast majority of the steel types are dual type.
Yeah. I mean, I just listened to you for all of the mono steel types that exist.
Also, if you're
like, it's tiny.
If you manage to lucky your way into a sand team, this is the mega you want on that sand team.
After Mega T-Tar.
Well, after Mega T-Tar, but Mega T-Tar
not necessarily.
Well,
not necessarily. I think regular tar is probably more utility on sand than Mega T-Tar does.
Yeah.
Just because if you really need that extra sand turns, you can run Smooth Rock based, but on Mega Tar you have to run the Mega Stone.
Yeah. So I mean, and it's going to depend on like the sand team you built. But if you need a mega, if you need a mega for your sand team and Mega T-Tar's already been picked or something like that. You could do worse.
You could get M-Aggron, you could get Mega Steelix as well.
Yeah, Mega Steelix is a good pick for that.
Another discussion.
So
and MagneZONE is also the only mega that is a monotype coming from a dual type.
Right.
It benefits hugely from shedding that dual type because it sheds its 2-4x weaknesses.
It basically sheds what I call the Stack Attacka issue. Because
it becomes not rock steel, which is
definitely a benefit.
Terrible typing defensively, great offensively.
And that's gonna be that's gonna be one of the best ways to beat it is if you can force it to switch in before it's mega evolved into a fighting move or
just any special move in general.
Yeah, it's gonna that'll be one of your best ways to get rid of it. Now, obviously,
it does have sturdy, so that does hurt.
Yeah. But the thing is, if you can even just get it low enough before it mega evolves, it'll be much easier to deal with once it's mega evolved.
With low recovery options.
Right. Like they definitely have to start forcing the triage right there. So I think that about covers it for MagneZONE. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you, Pack, for joining us this week. Pack will definitely be back on here. We've got to pick his brain more on a few different topics. And so we're glad to have you. Emerson should be back next week, so we'll have him back on here. Can't wait to see you then. This has been the MagneZONE, and just keep battling, trainers. Just keep battling. I'll come up with a better outro one day, but it is not this day. It is not here. Goodbye.
All right.